We also want to talk about some of the bills that have been passed and their impact and what you're hearing about some things. So we had a $21 billion budget that was passed, right?
That's correct. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. That's for 2 years?
That's a 2-year budget. That's
right,
correct.
That's a 2-year budget. So a big thing that we talked about whenever we were talking about budgeting was the retirement. And I know that you're heavily involved with that.
We've been, we're in a pension crisis, Gary, in Kentucky, and it's quite alarming what's going on with our pensions. Let me back up. We had a $21 billion budget, and really the first time since I've been in the General Assembly, we did not budget to zero. We usually spend all the money that we're projected to receive. This year we left $150 million that we did not budget. We left that to go into the rainy day fund. We put $973 million into our budget, into our pension plans. We also set aside $125 million in a permanent fund to help us in a future date to pay down some of these pensions, the pension liability. And we also budgeted, Gary, and one of the very important thing, we budgeted $3 million to do a full audit, performance and actuarial audits on the pension plans to really go in and look under, turn over the rocks and look under them and find out, we don't know what we don't know. One of the things about our pension plans, not necessarily KTRS, they've been a little more open than KRS, but a lot of these pension funds have been very secretive about their investments and some of the things that they're doing, and we really don't know where we stand. We need to know exactly how bad this problem is, and I think we've started to dig our way out, but we just need to know how deep the hole really is and how bad the problem really is, and start shining some sunlight on this issue. And because it is we're talking about a $30 billion liability, and that's a lot of money.
Yes.
That's a lot of money.
So was there a proposed plan on how to eradicate that debt over time, or is that still need? Are you going to use this audit in order to come up with that plan?
Well, we've kind of backed off of any kind of plan right now until the audit is done. Okay. And I think I misspoke. I think it was I said $973 million to the retirement pensions, but that was $973 just to the KTRS. Mm-hmm. We put other money into the KRS, so it was in excess of $1 billion we put into pensions. But we really need to see where all the issues are. And like I said, that RFP has gone out. They're already gathering information for that audit. And hopefully during this next session, we will have some of that information back and we'll be able to start making some changes. Okay. And one of the things that, of course, this year we had Senate Bill 2 that I was a sponsor of, our co-sponsor, and started, looking at shining a lot of sunlight. Sunshine's good when transparency for these pension plans, and we have proposed a lot of things. It passed the Senate, it failed in the House. The governor implemented several of the key provisions that we had in Senate Bill 2, and I was very glad of that. But, a lot of the problems we have with the pension plan came to light last year. You remember in November of last year, me calling for the chairman of the retirement system to resign because he had taken a 25% raise, and I didn't think that was very appropriate at all in a retirement system that's really a sinking ship that's got some very serious problems to be taking a 25% pay raise. Not only did we not have the money to give him that type of pay raise, it spikes his pension, and that's one of the things we've been fighting. It gave him a pension spike, and so it just created a lot of problems. But when that happened, several things came to light. One thing came to light, Gary, is that almost every contract in state government, and his pay raise, he was a contracted individual. That contract should have came before the legislature for review. Just about every contract in state government, there's very little exceptions. Most contracts over $10,000 go before contract review, which is a group of legislators that look at every contract state government does. KRS is exempt from that. That's called the Model Procurement Code. They're exempt from that. That was one of the things we had in Senate Bill 2. Another thing that we looked at, just about every, not every board and commission, but the majority of the top echelon, or a lot of the board members, when they're approved or appointed to boards, they have to go through Senate confirmation. None of the members of the KRS, none of them are subject to Senate confirmation. So we thought that was very important. That was in Senate Bill 2. Also last year, we gave, was 2 years ago, we gave state employees, we gave them a very meager raise, 2% in the first year, 1% in the second year. And but I was at a retirement system meeting one day. Their employees got an additional raise on top of the 2% and 1%. And I said, well, how can they do that? Come to find out, I didn't realize this. They had their own personnel system. So in the governor's executive order, he has moved that person, and that was also in Senate Bill 2, excuse me, to move the pension folks that are working for the pension system back into the personnel cabinet that oversees all the other state employees. So there's a lot of things going on there that are not right. The KRS, the Kentucky Retirement System, has over 300 employees, and that's a lot of employees. The legislative and judicial retirement system has one full-time employee, and so it's a very small fund compared to KRS, but KTRS is actually a larger fund and has more assets and more people involved in that, and they have, I think they just have a little over 100 employees. So, like I said, KRS is to me seems very top heavy with employees, and this audit will show that. Do we have too many employees there? Are our administrative costs too high? And I believe they are. And so we'll get to the bottom of it. Last year, we only have about $17 billion in assets. And this year, they lost more in the stock market. They lost more money than what we put in. And like I said, we appropriated additional money for the KRS and KERS, and so it's one of those issues that we've made a promise to those employees, those retirees out there, and I know I talk to retirees all the time. They're very concerned about the health of the KRS, the Kentucky Retirement System, and I try to assure them that the Commonwealth has an obligation to make sure that this a promise made is a promise kept, and we will keep that promise. But we've got to get to the root of the problem. We've got to stop the bleeding. We got to start digging our way out of this hole this $30 billion hole that we're in, and it's not going to be an easy job, and it's not going to go away overnight. And so I serve on the PPOB, Public Pension Oversight Board, and we meet every month, and it's been very, very eye-opening, the issues that we've discussed and some of the questions that we ask, and been very surprised by the answers that we've received. I think all the retirement systems, when we've asked them questions, have been very forthcoming when we ask them a question. but they're not real open to giving us the answer to something that we don't ask. And that's again back to that audit. I think that audit's going to tell us a lot of what we need to know.
And hopefully that will be in your hands prior to the legislative session next January.
I can't say for sure, but it'll definitely be in our hands next year. So you're not going to see a lot of changes made until we have that audit and the recommendations from the auditors. They're going to make recommendations to things that they see that need to be changed.
Okay, all right. But next year's session is a short session.
That's correct. We go into session. I think it's January the 7th. Don't hold me to that. I'd have to look and see what it's. Let's back up. We go into session on the first Tuesday after the first Monday at high noon, and that's not the 7th. That's probably earlier than that. That's probably,
I think it's like the second.
Second or third. And we're in session for 4 days: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and we'll actually pass some legislation probably those days. We have a lot of organizational meetings, and we have some ethics classes that we go to, and then we're out for 3 weeks. The rest of January we do not meet, and we go back in February. We meet the entire month of February, and probably about the first 3 weeks of March. So it's a short session. It's a 30-day session. Typically, the load is not as much legislation is filed and passed in that short session. That's the way it's designed. Now, the last time we had a short session, we had a lot of legislation introduced. So hopefully, we're going to keep the number of bills filed this time to a minimum and not have so much legislation filed. One of the things that we'll be talking about in this next legislative session, I don't think we won't act on it during the regular session, but tax modernization will certainly be a hot topic and to be something that we'll discuss a lot. And you can see if we can come to an agreement, you can see a special session sometime next year to come back and work on the tax modernization. I know the governor is very concerned, and he really wants to eliminate the death tax, and he also wants to eliminate the inventory tax. Those two taxes are really. We had testimony from a lady from Marion County here recently at one of our committee meetings about the inheritance tax and how devastating it had been to her family, and. And we hear a lot of other stories about the inheritance tax in Kentucky, and a need to deal with that. So those two things will certainly be. And the inventory tax is really starting to affect us in Jefferson County around the airport zone, where you see a lot of these huge warehouses in Bullitt County that have these huge amounts of inventory. And a lot of those companies are starting now to locate in Indiana instead of locating in Kentucky. So we need to look at that inventory tax and other things. We definitely, as we go forward, and you try to make Kentucky more attractive to business and industry. One of the things in the past, Gary, that we've been very fortunate in Kentucky, and it's helped us attract business and industry, is our low electorate rates. And with the new requirements from the federal government on emissions, we're starting to see a phase out of gas-fired furnaces to generate electricity, and so we're starting to see a lot. These electric generating plants are converting to natural gas, which is very cheap right now. But we have the cheap coal and converting to the natural gas because it is cleaner. But it doesn't separate us. It doesn't make Kentucky cheaper than the surrounding states like we have been in the past. So we really need to change Kentucky's tax code. Our personal income tax is very high compared to some states like Florida and Tennessee and Indiana to our north, and of course Tennessee to our south. Tennessee, their personal income tax is 0, none. We can't get there. I don't think in Kentucky we'd have to make a lot of changes. We'd have to tax food and medicine. I don't think we're prepared to do that. But Indiana's personal income tax is 3%. I do think we can get to 3%. Kentucky's corporate income tax is very high compared to some other states. I think we can reduce our corporate income tax and work on expanding our sales tax and looking at some of our sales tax exemptions. We have a lot of sales tax exemptions, and they've not been reviewed for many years. So there's some sales tax exemptions that we could look at. So, when you start looking at tax modernization, there's winners and losers. And one thing you want to make sure that it's not, you want to make sure that it's not a smokescreen to raise taxes, that you're really doing a modernization to help the economy grow and to grow our tax base as our economy grows. One of our biggest problems right now is one of our leading generators of revenue in Kentucky is the sales tax. And the sales tax has grown very slowly over the years because of the increased use of the internet. And we're not collecting a lot of the items bought on the internet. We're not collecting sales tax on that. So it like I said, we have to modernize the way we collect taxes. And it's not a tax increase. It needs to be something that's done fairly. It needs to be something that's studied and that there's not a additional burden put on anybody, that it's something that most people can agree that needs to be done, and and look at that, and so we'll be looking at that when we go back into session in 2017. I look to hear from a lot of constituents about tax modernization as we move forward, and there'll be a lot of things this next session that we're going to talk about. Like I said, the retirement system is going to be very much there at front and center. Education is always important. We'll be talking about a lot of education issues with the new federal legislation that's been passed. Every Child Succeeds and Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, and that implementation in Kentucky. So we started with that last year in the Senate Bill 1, which was a Let Teachers Teach Act. We have a lot of undue requirements on teachers in the classroom, and we're trying to get rid of some of those. ESSA does the same thing, tries to relieve some of those paperwork burdens on educators. So we've got some, heroin continues, the drug problem continues to be a real problem in Kentucky, and I'm kind of lost to what we can do to stop that. Of course, more money and more recovery beds is always important, and I don't know that exactly where we'll go, but I do know that we'll look at that. It's an epidemic. And just about every community in the state is affected by it. So we'll be looking at that. And
yeah, we had neighbors in Teller County. They had 12 overdoses in 1 week with a couple of deaths. Resulting in that, Boyle County had about 8 or 9 in 1 week. So, and we were just talking before that August 30th is actually International Overdose Awareness Day. So
August 30th.
August 30th. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's right here.
Exactly.
That's tomorrow.
Yep, that's tomorrow. You're right. That's where we're bringing this.
Yeah.
So it's obviously it's an international problem, as we said, but it also is happening here. It's not something that's just happening elsewhere.
Yeah,
so.
it is a major problem, and most every family is affected by it one way or the other. It affects our workforce. It's like I said, it affects everything. And I wished I had a silver bullet or a magic wand that I could end that problem. But it is a problem we have to deal with and continue to be,
and it feeds
vigilant.
One of the most, I think you said before, it's education, incarceration, and
Yeah.
something else that is.
We're spending about 88% of our budget to educate, medicate, and incarcerate the citizens of Kentucky, and that doesn't leave a lot of money left over to do other things.
And a lot of the incarceration is connected somehow with drugs.
And we were talking earlier about, we passed House Bill 463 several years ago. Kentucky's prison population in the last 10 years has doubled. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. So we were trying to do something to take these low-level offenders, these drug offenders, and get them treatment. Do treatment rather than incarceration, because we weren't helping them, incarcerating them. We were only spending taxpayer dollars to warehouse them. So we've tried to do that, and 463 seemed to be working. But now we've started to see a just tremendous increase in our jail population again. And so, there's been rumors about the governor doing an executive order and opening up a couple of the private prisons again. Our jails are, we talked about that during session. We're facing some federal lawsuits and some federal sanctions from the federal government because of prison and jail overcrowding. So that's all been rumor.
There was discussion with the former Marion Adjustment Center getting another contract.
That's correct, and like I said, there's no confirmation that that's happening, but there has been a lot of talk. I usually ask once a week if there's anything official, and I'm told that there's been no decision made, but there is a lot of talk about reopening 2 of the private prisons in Kentucky to relieve the jail overcrowding, and most of the jailers I've talked to, they are experiencing overcrowding.
So, a lot of issues to deal with.
It is, Gary, and as we're in August, August is just about gone. We get ready to start into the festival time of year with, Apple Festival in Casey County, the Ham Days here in Marion County, and the Bourbon Festival in Bardstown and Nelson County. So, those are the three communities in my district. There's Kentucky has fall festivals, from Washington County, Spencer County, Jefferson County. The Gaslight Festival in Jefferson County is typically the same week as the Bourbon Festival, and just festivals everywhere. So it's a great time, and here we sit here today. It's 93 degrees. It's hard to believe that fall's right around the corner, but it's here.
Yeah.
And but I would encourage people to, as we go forward, to please give me a call. My phone number is 270-692-6945. You can contact me by if you don't remember my phone number, you can jimmyhigdon.com. If you want to Google that, and you can email me through my webpage at jimmyhigdon.com. You can Facebook me. It's amazing the different ways that people can contact us now, Gary. So I check about 5 different forms of communication every day to see if anybody's trying to get in touch with me. So feel free to contact me. People say, well, they hate to bother me. Sometimes somebody say, well, I just hate to bother you. When I took this job, I knew people would need to bother me, and that's okay. It's not a bother. That's my job. I tell people all the time, I spend a good part of my day, every single day, working on constituent services. And, I work with the congressional offices, Senator Paul, Senator McConnell's office, Congressman Whitfield, Congressman Guthrie, Congressman Yarmouth, and Congressman Massey. I'm in 4 congressional districts. And by the way, Gary, I'm probably one of the few legislators that would ever tell you that I've served in all 6 congressional districts. And that's kind of unusual for a legislator to be able to say that. But anyway, I do get a lot of correspondence, and that's something that I think it's very, very important. The constituent service part of my job. In fact, I feel like it's probably more important than the legislative part of the job, because I am able to help a lot of people steer through or cut through the government bureaucracy to find the help that they need to the issues that they're having. So feel free to give me a call. I don't mind.
Great. Okay, I've been talking with State Senator Jimmy Higdon with the 14th District. This has been Gary White for Central Kentucky Television.